Good morning, my name is Mike Turpey. I'm a Scottish Blue Badge tourist guide, and I'm walking out on a virtual tour around some of my favourite locations in Edinburgh, which are close to where I stay in Stockbridge. Now today I find myself heading for the Dean Village, beside the most beautiful Water of Leith. See a wee look down there, and you can perhaps hear the water rushing away there. Now the Dean Village was where a lot of industry was actually happening from as far back as the 12th century, when King David I included it in a royal charter and connected it with the Palace of Holyrood. Of course, the monks, Augustinian monks, were well known for having a hand in raising livestock and milling of grain. The oldest building we've got here today is going back to about the 17th century, but this was a hub of industry, and this water, which is very picturesque and is a haven for wildlife today, and is also a protected urban site. It wasn't always like this. It was quite smelly. It was a hub of industry with many mills. In fact, there was 100 mills operating out of here at one point. But that declined in the 1960s as Leith began to be a focus of the milling of flour, with the building of more modern industrial buildings, and it put this place kind of out of fashion, and it went down a bit in the 1960s. The water was polluted, it was smelly, it wasn't pleasant to walk by, but there was a regeneration programme in the 1970s which resulted in this walkway, the Water of Leith walkway, which I'm walking along just now. Favourite place for people. Now just ahead of me you can see the Dean Bridge. The Dean Bridge originates from the name D-E-N-E, which is an old word meaning deep valley, and of course today we know it as D-E-A-N. Dean Bridge is a massive structure. It was at one point in the 19th century one of the tallest bridges, designed by Thomas Telford, the famous Scottish engineer, who had a hand, or rather designed the Caledonian Canal, which you may be familiar with, and many harbours around Scotland. He was a very important figure in the repopulation of Scotland, especially the Highlands, in the late 18th, early 19th centuries. Now, the purpose of this bridge, previously there had been a big estate on the other side of the river, and it was owned by the Nisbet family, but then it was bought by an aspiring merchant called John Learmonth, and he wanted to have access to the land across this kind of huge dip, and it was difficult for people to get over there, so decided on this bridge so that he could develop the lands and estates on the other side for some of the wealthier merchants and industrialists, because Edinburgh was a very wealthy centre for trading, for international trade in particular. So you can see a lot of the greenery along here today. On the other side of the pathway, very ancient area, other side of the river, is what's called the Dean Path, and that was in existence from 11th century at least. And the funeral of Queen Margaret, the procession carrying her remains, went along that Dean Path because she had died at Edinburgh Castle, and her remains will be taken to Dunfermline Abbey, but it was also a pilgrimage route. You can't see very much of it today, but it would be very popular with people from the south of Scotland and further afield coming to visit historic sites such as St Andrews and Dunfermline. See the amazing architecture of the bridge there. During lockdown today, it's a very popular area for people exercising, for cyclists and joggers, and people just out for a wander to get the wonderful air, because it's spring in Edinburgh and it's most beautiful. So I'm just going to pass the remains of what was called Lindsay's Mill on the right hand side, and Lindsay's Mill still retains the ancient millstones in the centre, and these millstones were actually powered in a rotational way by horses, which would power the mills, would the stones, the millstones. So we'll have a little look at the millstones. What was Lindsay's mill. So they are there. And they're sort of like an artistic installation today, and it's an important feature referencing Edinburgh's industrial past. So the Dean village, as I was saying, well, it used to have 100 mills there. The length of this Water of Leith is about 16 miles, and from Balerno, it originates up in the Pentland Hills, Balerno, and then it comes out at Leith. So on the other side here, you see the sunlit architecture of the former mill buildings, which today happen to be apartments. This was all very much restored as the need for industry declined. They cleaned up the water, became very beautiful to walk beside and very picturesque. And if I turn you around to see some of the ancient buildings, 17th century building there with the yellow. Some of these houses were public buildings, gathering places for the bakers, but some were domestic dwellings for the mill workers too, which are now been tweaked to be very beautiful accommodations. Take another look down here from the bridge here from about the 17th century that I'm standing on. Got a nice view of the church, the mill buildings, the Water of Leith there. I'll take you over to the other side. And it's worth noting the building's high up on the cliff almost, looking down, and one of the most famous personalities of Edinburgh had a house up there overlooking the Water of Leith, and he was called John Ritchie Finlay, and he was the owner of the Scotsman newspaper, and he was a philanthropist. He wanted to improve people's conditions, especially the poorer people, and there was many of them down here in the Dean village during the later part of the 19th century. So he had this idea as an improver to build this amazing complex that I'm actually going to walk in here, which is called Well Court. The Well Court is built in a kind of decorative Gothic style of architecture, kind of arts and craftsy, if you're familiar with the work of William Morris and people like that. So just get a little glimpse through the gateway here of Well Court. See people with their laundry out here, and the tower with the clock and the bell, which would be rung to get people up to their work, to get the children up to go to their school, and the school was just hanging around the corner here also. So that's Well Court. So that brings us to the end of my little walking tour, virtual tour. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you will have the opportunity to come to Scotland someday. Most beautiful country, wonderful landscapes, and of course our amazing historic capital city, Edinburgh. And I'll be continuing with these little walks, but for now, all the best, and keep well, and hope to see you sometime. All the best. Thank you. Bye. Bye.